Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome to episode 21, How the Best Mothers Show Up Mindfully. Reminder that our podcast is not to be construed as medical advice.
This is yet another episode in our series on mindful love, and the last of our focus on mothers and mothering. Today, we wanted to chat about our issues and judgments of ourselves as moms, realizing that this applies to others in caregiver roles and mom-like roles, and acknowledging that we offer the episode in the mom role because we are both moms, and so that is our perspective. We've chosen to call it The Best Mothers Show Up Mindfully, and because we are both passionate about mindfulness, we really believe that the best anything shows up mindfully.
Our intention for today's episode is to help imperfectly perfect moms all over the world tap into our innate capacity for mindfulness and intention as one of the most important parenting and personal nourishment tools. Specifically, resting in the trust of your own instincts and ability as a mother, and also being intentional about how you want to show up for yourself and your child or children as a mother.
We hope you'll discover how mindfulness, by its very definition, can lead you to be the perfect mom for your child or children, and how, by helping you be in the moment, it can help you enjoy the process, how it can help you get out of judgment of yourself and judgment of your children. And that when you show up calm and compassionate and making decisions from a mindful space, everyone benefits. And when you're able to approach parenting with curiosity and love and compassion and acceptance for yourself and everyone else, everybody wins. The takeaways from today's episode are really two. To try to replace self-doubt with groundedness and trust in yourself and trust in your children. And to continue to work on something that's been a theme recently, replacing expectation with mindful intention. In the spirit of sharing stories, we wanted to start with sharing some of our own challenges as moms to set the stage for some of what we'll share today.
I have myriad challenges being a mother. I have an a BC baby and an AD baby. And what I mean by those acronyms are AD for after cancer diagnosis and BC for before cancer. So I have a 11-year-old and a 3-nager. And the struggles that I have most with them are that they don't do what I think is best for them. At the same time, they concurrently have their own ideas about what's best for themselves. They have their own agency. And I'm frustrated, to just get a little bit more specific, that my eldest doesn't put her dirty dishes in the dishwasher. She inevitably leaves her dirty dishes from dinner or lunch on the table, even though I have reminded her bajillions of times that I'm not her maid and that she needs to put her own dirty dishes in the dishwasher. I'm frustrated that she does not automatically do her Chinese homework or practice piano. And basically, I need to ask her every single day about those two particular activities. I'm frustrated that even though my 3-nager is more than capable of urinating in a toilet, so she will literally take off her own diaper, throw it away on her own volition, go get herself a new diaper and ask a caregiver to put it on for her. She still chooses not to do toileting in the way that I would like her to toilet. So currently she toilets with the assistance of my eldest and gets the prize of a sticker. So we're working on it.
My children don't do what I think is best for them either. And I'm frustrated. I'm a lot less frustrated than I used to be. And I describe my issue as more of an issue of control. I really am at a space. So my children are almost 16 and 21 and 20, almost 25. So I don't really have any control. In fact, two of them are adults. But even then, we want our children to do what we think is best. And we think that as a parent, we know best. And yet I'm coming to understand that maybe I don't know best. I have more experience, but I'm not them. And so realizing that I have a manual for how I think they should act, but their manual for how they think they should act is totally different. And as a parent, you can be a guide, but curiosity has really helped with a lot of these things. And the biggest struggle that I have is realizing that you have to let your kids make mistakes. And it's painful to watch them make mistakes, but that all we can do is give them our advice, especially as teenagers and young adults. I think it's a little bit different with younger children. Like you wouldn't let them make a mistake and jump into a pool unsupervised, for example. But when they get older, interestingly, the stakes are even a little bit higher. And sometimes the mistakes are even a little more costly. But that part of life is learning to make mistakes and trusting that they will learn from them and grow from them. And trusting that I can let them do that and everyone will be okay has been a learning process. The other issue that I apparently have, because I've been told this by my kids, is that my expectations are really high. What I've discovered recently is I don't know that they're high. I think they're just different. And so my kids have different ideas of how they want to do things. What I have discovered is, so they tell me that I have changed and that my expectations have changed. And what's actually happened is they haven't, I just manage them better. But that when I stop sharing my expectations and I stop trying to control and I let them be them, they're actually thriving in totally different ways that I would have never thought of. And so realizing that when you create space, your children, if you can trust them, and this is a theme of this conversation today, that they can teach you things and they can also grow into amazing things and people that you didn't even know about or think about or know was possible. And so realizing perhaps that you can trust each other. So I wanted to start the conversation today about this concept of doubt and trust. And self-doubt is something that comes up so often. It comes up with many of the clients that I work with who are moms who doubt their parenting and have intense stress, anxiety, worry, guilt that they may not be doing it right or doing enough. And it was also something that came up in my role as a pediatrician. And I do want to say that nothing that I say here today is medical advice. I'm really bringing it up in my experience as a mom and as a coach, even though I happen to also be a pediatrician. But I think the most helpful way to think about the doubt is we want to just stomp on it and say, well, I don't doubt myself anymore. I'm tough, I'm strong, I trust myself. But instead, perhaps we can embrace and bring in the doubt and see that the doubt is not because we're not capable or because we don't know what we're doing, but the doubt is because we love and because we love our children so much. And the doubt comes up because we think the stakes are high, and sometimes the stakes are actually high, but that it's a natural human response. And I wanted to bring up a quote that a client of mine shared with me because she was able to see why she struggled so much. And she said, it was easier perhaps in medical school because there wasn't love involved. We were talking about like, well, you've done hard things before. Why is this different? And the mom thing, love is involved. And so what she said was, love changes the equation. Love raises the stakes, and something bad can happen. And so it's true, but it also makes it more important that you trust yourself, because if you're not going to trust yourself, who can you trust? And if you're not going to trust your child as they are to grow into the human that they're going to be, who can you trust? And that the biggest thing that gets in the way of trust is the issue I mentioned that I struggle with, which is control, that we think we can control things that we can't. And perhaps if we can rest in the knowledge of grounded trust, that things will work out in the end, that's where we won't miss the moments, and our children will be allowed to grow into whoever they are meant to become. And so this mom discovered, actually through coaching, was that it was the doubt itself that was the problem. And that when she was able to move past the doubt, that things actually began to settle and become, as she described, the snow globe began to settle, and she could see clearly the direction that she wanted to go in.
Inviting the noticing of the doubt as a signal to show us and to show our children that we care and that we love. So I wanted to invite all of you to contemplate with us the 9 attitudes of mindfulness as taught by Jon Kabat-Zinn, the creator of the mindfulness-based stress reduction course. All of these 9 attitudes, when applied, can perhaps provide options to show up in the role of mom in a more constructive way. And in the future, we'll be devoting an entire episode at least for further exploration on each of these attitudes. And notice that many of these attitudes came up in the last 2 episodes as well. So attitude number 1, non-judging, acceptance, patience, beginner's mind, or in other words, seeing each moment or each circumstance as if for the first time, trust, non-striving, letting go, gratitude, and generosity.
Each of those is a powerful parenting tool in and of themselves. And thinking about each of those as why we called this episode The Best Moms Are Mindful, because if you could practice each of those, what an incredible difference it would make. I'm just thinking about my own children and the concept of showing up, non-judging, accepting, patient. I like to think of beginner's mind as curiosity. I realize it's not exactly the same, but it helps me show up spaciously, trusting. Non-striving is my expectations, and over control, as is letting go. And one of the things we talked about in a previous episode, but we didn't today, is gratitude. And just gratitude for the fact that you are a mom. And I often say, want what you have. And so thinking about your 3-nager and potty training, like we get so lost in the frustration of it, but gratitude that she's there and you have the opportunity to potty train her, and that my young adults talk to me and we have a beautiful relationship, and we can come to things with very different opinions and perhaps have some discord about politics or other things, about what might be safe and what might not be in COVID, for example, but that gratitude for that relationship's existence, even as it is. And motherhood really is about generosity. Sometimes it's about over generosity. And so that one strikes me as interesting, but it's one of the most giving relationships anywhere. So mindful practice helps us be a better mom. And one of the things that has been really key, I think, for many people that I work with, is this idea that we can respond rather than react. And we talk a lot about mindfulness changing the wiring and revving up your parasympathetic nervous system and slowing things down and giving you the space to breathe before you respond. So your parenting doesn't come from a place of reaction, but once again, it comes from this place of mindful intention. And when we show up mindful, we can model compassion and non-judgment and be the way that we want our children to be. And that is powerful. Two things to share here. One, in yoga teacher training for kids, one of the things they talk about is that one of the most powerful things you can do in yoga teacher training for kids is, because in little kids classes, the parents come, is to teach parents to meditate. Because if parents show up much more mindfully, that's actually the most powerful impact on the child, because it changes the whole environment. And so as a mom, I encourage you to take mindfulness-based stress reduction, perhaps with Mi Chang when she teaches it again, but that it's really a powerful tool in parenting. And then the other thing is a quote from Maya Angelou, which is that people don't remember what we said or did, but how we made them feel. And knowing that when we feel mindful inside and we show up mindful, it's a totally different tone. Reflecting on the last podcast episode, we show up with a totally different tone, and that tone sets the tone for our children's lived experience. And what a beautiful way to grow up and experience a relationship, even as a young adult, with your parents, with a tone of mindfulness and spaciousness and calm and peace. So this antidote to self-doubt is trust. And we've talked a bit about trust as one of the key things in being a mom and enjoying your mom role and your mom experience. And so trusting yourself that you are perhaps the best mom you can be. And in fact, you're the best mom you can be at this moment because that's who you are. Doesn't mean you don't want to be better, but tapping into your strengths and trusting that you can trust yourself is actually a tool to be a better mom.
There's an inherent confidence that can be cultivated to trust ourselves as mothers. Perhaps there's a permission slip that needs to be written about giving yourself permission to trust yourself, especially in times of difficulty. And then extending that trust to your children and allowing them to learn the lessons, trust that they'll learn the lessons that they need to learn in life, even, and I'd like to add, especially if it means letting them fail, followed up by trusting in that they'll work through the consequences.
Thinking about your daughter, trusting that when she's ready, the potty training will happen easily and in good time. I think we often catastrophize as parents, and that, what if this never works out or it's taking too long? And what if patience there, and knowing that she's going to do this all on her own schedule, and that's how it will work out perfectly.
Thank you for that reminder. The 9 attitudes of mindfulness are very helpful in my circumstance with my 3-nager and potty training.
And you could do a whole thought download on that. We could do a whole episode on the 9 attitudes of mindfulness and potty training. It would actually be fun, but I'm not sure anyone would want to listen to all the deep moments, except perhaps for a parent who's potty training. So shifting gears a little bit to the idea of dropping expectations once again, and noticing that we've talked about this several times in the last few episodes, and that it's one of the key tenets of easeful relationships, and showing up with intention for our own imperfections, other people's imperfections, and creating a relationship that we want. So we don't just have manuals for other people. As I mentioned, I have manuals for my mother and manuals for my children and manuals for my husband. And what I mean by that is how I think they should show up for certain circumstances, etc. One of the longest manuals that we have is our manual for ourselves, and particularly our manual for ourselves as a mom. all the things a good mom would, should do. And I would offer that these manuals come from a place of deep love, and that's why they're so long. Love for our children, worry for our children, wanting the best for them. But that what actually is in our manual isn't necessarily loving, in that it's often not realistic. And it's often not what love would do. And it often leads to guilt and shame, and therefore is not what love would do. And when guilt and shame show up, we often get stuck, we feel stressed, and we act from a space of non-clarity of vision and the fight or flight response. And so a lot of moms find that they're in that fight or flight response because of their manual, which they don't even realize that they have. And so I would offer you to take some time and think about what your manual is for yourself. What do you think a great mom should do? And once you've written it all out, look at it and decide if it makes sense. Is it realistic for a human being to do all of those things? And are there things in your manual that you are trying to control as a mom that you think a mom should do that aren't even in your control at all? And then decide what part of it you want to keep. And as an act of mindful minimalism, could you have the most minimal manual for yourself as a mom, which might just be to show up with love and show up with a loving intention, for example. There isn't a right answer, but just explore it and sit with it and notice whether your manual is realistic for a human being who in many cases also plays a lot of other roles. Perhaps you have a partner, perhaps you have a job.
As you're inviting listeners to reflect upon their manual, it brings up that perhaps our manuals are reflections of our clinging to perfectionism. And how can we let go of our manuals just as we give ourselves permission to let go of perfectionism?
I love that. And I wanted to share that messing up is actually fantastic for your children. So when you mess up as a mom, they see what to do and they learn what to do when you mess up, and that you can course correct and that you can fix things and continue to move on. And it gives them permission to be humans as well. And so being imperfect and changing as a mom is one of the best things you can do for your kids. So rather than beating ourselves up for having messed up or only learning things far into our mom journey that we wish we'd known before, just realize that them watching you change is perhaps one of the best lessons and a beautiful opportunity to learn, and that they need to learn to solve problems so that you're just showing them how to do that.
One important aspect that might feel uncomfortable for some, I know certainly for my own parents and reflecting back on my childhood, was this act of apologizing to our children. And so I want to invite you to give yourself permission to apologize to your children when it's necessary.
Your comment about permission slips struck me as amusing on multiple levels, because of course, as a parent, we fill out tons of permission slips for our children. And so perhaps you could mindfully, I know we haven't in the last year, but we will again, mindfully, every time you're filling out a permission slip, ask yourself what you need to give yourself permission for, or what would you like to give your children, what else might you like to give your children permission to do in life? It struck me as a mindful moment that you could capitalize on, because I often found myself annoyed at having to sign the same boxes over and over and over again. And so could it be used as a mindful moment to tap into your intentions about how you want to show up for this parenting? And that is one of the key offerings of today, is to tap into your intentions about how you want to show up as a mom. So if you let go of the manual of list of expectations, choose your choice about how you want to be. Ask yourself what's most important. What would your future self recommend you show up focusing on? Would your future self focus on the lunches or the classes, or would your future self focus on spending time together? And would your future self worry about how long it's taking to potty train, or just do it without worry, for example, or whatever it might be? I think tapping into how you want to feel as a mom helps me a lot, because I often don't know the right step, or I don't know the right answer when there's conflict, or when I'm asked a difficult question. But if I think to myself, okay, well, I want to show up as a present and loving mom, or I want to show up as a mom who can learn from her mistakes, that helps guide then what happens next. And when you're intentional like this, your kids watch and they start to show up a bit more intentionally, and realize that your kids are always watching. And so that's part of the intention. What do you want them to see? Remembering that they won't remember likely what you did or said, but how you made them feel. And so when you tap into how you want to feel, you're showing up with that feeling, setting the tone, and that will change how they experience their own childhood, young adulthood, and relationship with you. And as the mom of teens and young adults, I'm reminded that this journey of parenthood is really long. And so we have our children as babies, and then toddlers and school age, and then teenagers, and then young adults. And then you have a daughter-in-law, and then you have grandchildren. And so it's a multifaceted relationship. And when you think about it that way, you can tap into that mindfulness tenet of patience, realizing it's a long game. And once again, I think tapping back into that trust, right? If you can trust that it's going to keep going, and any little mistake here or there is probably going to turn out okay.
So as we move closer to the end of our podcast for today, I want to invite some reflection questions. Are you able to use your experiences in the past and the present as a mother or mother figure to practice mindfulness? Giving yourself the permission to realize that quality time spent with your children is what's more important than quantity, and letting go of that mom guilt, especially if you're in healthcare and you might feel that there's time scarcity with regards to spending time with your children.
And coming from the abundant mindset again, how are you a great mom? Not where are you falling short, not what you could be doing better, but realizing how you're the perfect parent for your child, and tapping into how you're the best mom for your kids because you are their mom. And why are they the perfect kids for you? Perhaps a child with ADHD or chronic illness or special needs or stubbornness or feistiness, whatever it might be. Why are they the perfect kids for you? Reflecting back on Janet Archer's comment about her mom and how she was the perfect guide for her, how are your children the perfect guide for you as a mom to help you continue to grow and learn?
And I also offer these questions from a place of kindness and compassion for yourself. Where might there be growth opportunities for you as a mom? And perhaps those opportunities lie in your own self-care. So if you keep doing the same things over and over again, you can't really expect anything different, but the same result that might not have been constructive for you or your children. Perhaps there's an invitation here to look back on habitual reactionary patterns with your children and inviting this pause for you to take yourself through a circle of awareness, as taught in the mindfulness-based stress reduction class, of noticing thoughts just as they are, like clouds passing through the sky or leaves drifting down a stream, naming the emotions of the moment, noticing the different body sensations, and then acknowledging what your usual behavior patterns have been, especially when your children don't do what you want them to do, or when your children basically are not following your manual for them. Or perhaps when you catch yourself not following the manual that you have for yourself as a mother because you haven't dropped that manual, you haven't dropped that perfectionism. So I want to invite you to give yourself space to reflect upon all of this, and especially during the moments of difficulty.
And invite you to practice mindfulness for you and nourish you, knowing that when you nourish your heart first and your brain has a chance to relax, that you can show up for yourself as a mother and for your children as a mother in a more mindful, intentional, and trusting way. Wanted to end this episode with a quote from one of my clients who's the mom of a special needs child. And she said that she realized that all I need is to love her and love myself. As someone who loves and cares for myself, and especially during this season of my children's growth and development, doing the best I can with the challenges I face, knowing that my actions and decisions won't be perfect, but they will be coming from a place of love of self and love of my children and love of my family. Thanks so much for listening today. We would love it if you would leave us stars and personal reviews and follow us and share our podcast with others who you think might enjoy and benefit from listening. And for those of you that want to work on finding calm and peace and showing up with more love as a mother, I invite you to join me for the upcoming Mindful Love program. Learning to become a mindful mom is the greatest gift for you, for your co-parent, and for your children. You can find out more in the show notes, and it starts in June. Stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our weekly offering of a mindful moment, a gift for all of you. As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or up-level your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely. Thank you for joining us for this mindful moment. Today, I offer you the acronym called STOP. So STOP, this acronym can be used in times of stress, discomfort, a heated argument, particularly when in a situation with your children that might be going in a way that is not to your liking. And really, the STOP acronym can be used in a way that is applicable to all stressful and uncomfortable situations. So S stands for stop. So stop equates to pausing in the moment, so that with T, you take a breath. So you can take a mindful breath, noticing the sensations of the breath at the nostrils, or the chest rise and fall. O stands for observe. So observe like a witness. Observe by naming the emotions that you're going through, the body sensations that you have in that moment of difficulty. And then are you able to observe your thoughts as if they were clouds passing through the sky and not getting caught up into the storyline of those thought clouds? And then P is for proceed. Proceed then, after taking a moment to pause, breathe, and observe, proceed with greater skillful action as opposed to reaction. So P, proceed with your own healthier response. So hope that all of you can use stop the next time you encounter some difficulty. And thank you for practicing with us.